Hello, everybody. How are you all doing today? Hopefully, yeah, that's interesting. Someone in the chat. Okay, so let me address this real quick. For those of you guys that don't know, if you're watching this after the fact, when you watch this live, there's a chat that goes on. Okay, so there's a bunch of people interacting with me in the chat. And just to kind of recap, the reason why I do these live streams is because I release a normal video on my channel Monday and Friday, and then this is to answer all the questions because I get tons of emails and tons of questions on the YouTube comments and different things. So I do these to kind of answer those and to make it easier because typing out everything just takes forever. Okay. But anyway, so someone in the chat said that they played a commercial on the beginning of the stream, which I didn't realize YouTube did that. So that's very interesting. So YouTube's got to make money everywhere, right? So they're going to put commercials on everything they can. So, doing this live stream a little bit early this time because I wanted to be able to spend tomorrow, the holiday, with the family. So we're going to do something all day long, and I didn't want to have to worry about getting home at a certain time. So, you know, we may not have as many people in here, but hopefully we get a couple, and we'll try to answer all the questions that we can get to. I have a few things I want to cover, and, you know, we'll kind of go from there. Hey to everybody that's saying hi in the chat. How you guys doing? And Riley C, yes, my dome is a little shiny today. I decided to go ahead and shave it. So I do that because I'm a cheap ass, and it's super easy to just grab the clippers and shave my head myself. So kind of roll with it. I'll probably mention it again for the people that come in a little bit later, but I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know too right now. I have a new video series coming out. It's a little bit different than what I usually do. I kind of teased it yesterday. I really inadvertently teased it when I called in on Zach's live stream on HVAC Shop Talk, and decided I better get it out since I made it public before. I just wanted to go ahead and get my idea out before someone else gets it out too. So it's in lieu to my normal videos. So I release a normal video Monday and Friday. This video series that I'm going to be releasing has nothing to do with the Monday and Friday videos, okay? Because I still plan on releasing the technical videos Mondays and Fridays for sure, okay? So it's a little interesting thing that I'm doing with my wife, and I just kind of wanted to get her perspective on what it's like with HVACR, living with HVACR, and kind of address some questions. And hopefully, you know, my goal is to try to help people that are just coming into the trade, maybe their spouses and different things, to know what it's like and to see how we do it and how we cope with everything. I definitely have a different perspective. Perspective's not the right word. I have a different situation than a lot of people because I'm a business owner on top of being a service tech too. But I think that you guys can relate to some of the things that we talk about in this little series. Okay, so it's going to be a bonus series. It'll be a couple videos long. We're probably going to release them one at a time. We recorded one of them today, and I might upload it probably later this evening or something. But I will still release a normal video as usual, a technical video Mondays and Fridays. So we'll see. We've got some people talking in the chat right now. I'll definitely get to that, guys. As we always say, if you guys have, it's not Big Joe. It's not a new YouTube channel. It's nothing new. It's going to be on this channel. It's just a series, so it'll be a playlist. So it'll just be released on this. So nothing new to subscribe to or anything like that. It'll just be a video series that I release in lieu to my normal videos. So, all right. So, had an interesting question that I kind of wanted to address, and I've had this one come through before. And the question was, and I'm going to paraphrase, how do I convince a customer to replace parts that aren't necessarily bad, but that I should change while I'm in there doing another repair? Okay. For instance, when I work on a walk-in freezer and let's say I have a bad defrost termination switch, like I've had before, I change all the limit switches, just like I say. Whenever I change one limit switch, I change all 2 or 3, however many there is inside the system. Number one, I don't want to sound arrogant and like I'm a prick, but I really don't give the customer the choice sometimes, okay? If I have customers that nickel and dime me, they're usually not customers that I keep. Again, I don't want to sound cocky, okay? It's not like I live on a high horse or ride a high horse or whatever the phrase is, okay? It's just that, you know, the customers that I have, they trust me. And it's a trust that I've earned, okay, over time. So for the same thing that when I'm changing a condenser fan motor, you change a capacitor, okay? When I'm, brazing the suction line because there was a refrigerant leak, I change the liquid dryer. Okay. Do I necessarily have to change the liquid dryer? No. I mean, could I test the liquid dryer, maybe do a pressure drop across it? Yes. But it's just good practices to do certain things. Okay. So it does take some trust from the customer, and you do have to earn that trust. But at the same time, the way that I phrase things to the customer, I basically tell them, look, we need to do this repair. This is what the repair is going to cost. If they ask me to break it down, I break it down. And if they're going to go through and line item every single item and tear that quote apart, I'm really going to second guess whether or not I want to do work for that customer again. Okay. I'm not saying that every time I'm going to do it my way or the highway. Okay. I'm going to address each situation as it comes. But for the most part, when I do a repair, I tend to just kind of say what needs to be said and do the repair that needs to be done. Okay. Now I know that's a fine line between giving the customer something they don't want and doing what I want. Right. But at the same time, I have to use my best judgment, and I have to, do what I think is best for that customer. Now, it takes time, and I hope you guys don't take that the wrong way. I'm not a cocky guy that just says it's going to, you're going to do it this way, but I'm busy enough dealing with all the craziness that I have to deal with. So if I have to worry about a customer nickel and diming me on every single thing that I do, I'm really going to second guess whether or not I want to work with that customer anymore. Okay. I think I already said this, but I'll say it again. If you guys have questions, put them in caps lock. So that way, myself or Justin, the moderator, can see them, and we'll make sure that I try to get to them. Okay. Let's see. I'm reading through the chat right here. Okay. Yeah. Being proactive. That's a great way to phrase it. I'm being proactive when it comes into the repair. Now, there's also some things, like I do bring up to some customers like, hey, I'm changing an evaporator coil, and this is a multiplex system, meaning that there's multiple evaporators all over the place, and they're all in the same shape, but only one of them is leaking. I'm always going to go to the customer and say, hey, if one of them's leaking, the other three are going to be leaking soon. Do you want to change them? And they may say no. Okay, I'll leave it be. I definitely make sure that they understand that I wanted to change all of them. Okay. So I'm not doing it every single time. All right. But when it comes to certain things, I'm going to get in there, and I'm just going to say, this is what needs to be done. They're hiring me for my expertise. I'm going to quote things. I don't just do them on my own. I mean, I quote them, and then, then we'll address it as they want to take care of things and different stuff. So, all right. Right on, Isaiah. HVAC with ZSA says he hit 879 subscribers. Isaiah's a good kid, guys. If you guys don't subscribe to his channel already, please go and do so, because he's trying to make it to 1,000. So, all right. And I'm going to kind of go down my list here. I'm trying to get more and more professional and have a nice list here of things that I want to cover, and it's slowly getting there. Okay. Let's see. What else okay. So this is another really good one that I wanted to talk about too. And this is something that I'm working with an apprentice right now. And, he works with me. He usually is with me 3 to 4 days a week. And then I might have him with another tech 1 day a week just to give me a break. But because sometimes I have to get in the office and work and different things. But one thing that I stress to him all the time when he's working with me is that if you're struggling to do something, you really need to step back and think about it. Okay. Because a lot of times for majority, and I'm talking about let's say I'm taking apart an evaporator and you have to put it back together. And I just notice he's struggling really hard. And then sometimes I can step in and say, hey, just step to the side. And it takes me 2 seconds to put it together. Number one, he doesn't have the experience and he's learning. I'm not faulting him for that. But what I try to explain to everybody that I work with is that if you're struggling with something, right? If you're trying to put it together and you're having a really hard time, sometimes you just need to stop and think about it for a second. Okay. If it's difficult, you're probably doing something wrong or you don't understand how it works properly. And when I'm talking about assembling things, okay, because most of the time, not always, but most of the time, there's an easy way to do it. And if you step back and think about it, you'll figure it out. Okay. Sometimes it's worth it to step back and take a breather. Okay. Even if you're having a crazy technical problem where your brain's really having a hard time, go take a lunch, go take a break for a minute, think about it, calm down, go have a drink, relax, take a minute, breathe, and step back into it and address it. Okay. A lot of times we get caught up in craziness and we take shortcuts and we cut corners, and that's when problems happen. Okay. So step back, think about it, and then reapproach it. And a lot of times you're going to find out that if it was difficult, you were doing something wrong, and oh, darn it, I should have just done it like that. Or once you figure it out too, then you realize, oh my gosh, that was so easy. I know how to do that now. You know, different things like that. Okay. So, what is Isaiah's channel? Hey, Justin, can you link Isaiah's channel for these guys so they can sub if they can? All right. Let's see here. Cool. Okay. Next thing that I want to, yeah, guys, if you click on, I don't know what I was thinking there. If you guys click on, if you guys are using a computer, there's 3 dots next to the chat. If you click on the chat, the 3 dots, you can go to that person's channel and then you can sub. If you're not using a computer, then you'll have to search up his channel. But you guys can take his channel name is HVAC with ZSA. You can type that in. But if you're on a computer, yeah, just go to the end of the chat that, or the little, you know, phrase that he typed in the chat, and click the 3 buttons, and yeah, there you go. Right on. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, another really good question. So I released a video this last week on a glycol unit. Okay. It was a beer line chiller that wasn't working properly. And, the unit had a bad temperature controller. Okay. And you guys saw that I, installed a temporary temperature controller to get the customer going. And I, you know, kind of, hang on, let me click on this. I got something. Oh, okay. Something different. So I installed a temporary temperature controller on the unit, and I mentioned in the video when I was all done that I wasn't going to reuse that temperature controller and that I threw it away. And then I got a bunch of feedback. Hey, why did you throw that controller away? It was perfectly good. They last forever. They do. They definitely do. But as a business owner, I can't sell my customer used parts. There's nothing wrong. I see some people, they take used parts and they'll use them like for temporaries or something like that, fan blades and different things like that. But, you know, to each their own. I'm not knocking anybody for doing that. But when it comes to used parts, I sold that temperature controller to the customer for one. Okay, the customer paid for it. And I just threw it out when I was done because it had been sitting in glycol. You know, in a certain situation, if it was sitting in a perfect environment where nothing potentially corrosive was affecting it, then sure. But I don't know anything. You know, we had it sitting in a chemical, and I can't sell that or resell that to a customer, you know, because what happens if something happens with it? Not only was it sitting in glycol, and I realized glycol probably isn't corrosive, but I also had pinched the capillary tube down and put the lid on it. You know, it's just one of those things that I can't willingly sell a customer or try to reuse that part, because in my opinion, it's just going to become a headache. It's just going to lead to another problem. There's nothing worse than putting something in and then a day later getting a call back and then finding out that, oh yeah, I shouldn't have used that part, because then I have to eat that time. So for me, on that particular job on the glycol unit, you know, when I sent them the bill, it had a bill for the temporary temperature controller, and then it had a bill for the digital temperature controller, and they paid for both of them, and they understand that. And that's one of those things too with the same thing. Like, you know, I really didn't give my customer a choice, but I know what they expect of me. So they would not have accepted that their glycol unit or beer line chiller wasn't working for more than a couple hours. I mean, you know, this is a brewery, a microbrewery. So they need to sell that beer. So it's got to be, you know, their beer sales essentially are going to far trump a $90 temperature controller. So, you know, anyways, so yeah, I can't reuse those parts because it's just one of those things. It's not worth it for me to try to resell it. So definitely something. Okay. Slow Mosaic, you said, do I always check refrigerant charge by superheat and subcooling? And I'm assuming you say you work with old timers. No, I don't always check refrigerant charge by superheat and subcooling. You know, it just depends on what you're working on. Okay. I do majority of my work is refrigeration. So a lot of times superheat and subcooling is a byproduct. First thing I'm doing, I'm working on big built-up systems or medium-sized built-up systems. So I'm going to clear the sight glass, I'm going to wait for the box to get close to temp, clear the sight glass, and then dial in the superheat. Okay, subcooling when you're working with a system with the receiver kind of goes out the door. It still matters, but it's a hard thing to accurately measure when you have a receiver. So we really don't pay too much attention to subcooling. You know, it's kind of there and we think about it, but you know, we're more or less making sure we have a clear, solid column of liquid going to our expansion valve. And then once the box gets closer to box temp, then we're going to adjust the evaporator superheat to, make sure that the valve is performing properly and we're getting the most use out of that evaporator. As far as an air conditioning system, yeah, I mean, I'm always going to look at superheat and subcooling in one way or the other. Now, do I measure subcooling every single time? No. Sometimes I'll make a judgment call and I might be working on a package unit and I might not get out my temperature clamps. I might just put gauges on it and say, okay, things kind of look decent, but I'm using experience and I'm using some things, gauging what the temperature is. I kind of have an idea what my pressure should already be before I even put my gauges on there. Okay. Because if I'm working on a package unit air conditioner, I know that I'm going to be aiming for a 40-degree evaporator temperature. Okay. So you can see that obviously in your suction saturation temperature. So, now, what about charging a system? Yeah, if I'm charging up a system on a package unit, I'm going to weigh the charge in. And then I'll adjust it and dial it in by superheat and subcooling, whichever it is, okay, depending on whether I'm working on a fixed orifice or an expansion valve system. But as far as just like doing a PM check or something like that, I might not measure superheat and subcooling every time. It just depends on what the customer that I'm working for wants, right? Because if we're doing it in the commercial side, a lot of times these customers, they only want to pay you for a 4-hour PM. Well, I've got 5 package units, 15 refrigerators, 2 ice machines, 6 exhaust fans, a make repair unit. I can't do all that in 4 hours, right? So you got to kind of prioritize things depending on the maintenance. And so you set up things as a company to cater to what they expect from you and what they want from you and what they're willing to pay for. So hopefully that answers your questions. I know I went a little different. Let's see what else. Okay. How am I liking R448A? In Florida, it's just rolling out mainstream and a lot of the old guys are fighting it. It's just a refrigerant. I mean, yeah, it has a high temperature glide, but I mean, to be honest with you, the glide really doesn't hit me very much, right? Because I'm working on a heatcraft unit and the unit has a head pressure control valve or a headmaster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out, call the manufacturer, find out what the winter charge should be. Most of the heatcraft units have microchannel condensers, so you can't use the Spoilin 90-30-1 method to charge for the winter charge because that's only for a tube and fin condenser coil. So that's a coil with copper in it. So a lot of times what you got to do is lean on the manufacturer, Heatcraft Manufacturing, and ask them what the maximum charge is for that unit. And you got to roll with the maximum charge. So most of the package unit, the condensing units I've been installing are like 2 horsepower, 2.5 horsepower condensing units. And they come with basically a 14-pound receiver. So that means I can put 14 pounds of refrigerant in there pumped down. So a lot of times we'll just weigh in 14 pounds and they've been working just fine that way. Now, I'm not saying I don't pay attention to the refrigerant pressures or anything. We're going to evaluate those too. But I really haven't had a hard time doing installs on 448A. Where we're really going to see the issues potentially with 448A is on the older systems that you're retrofitting. Okay, you have to make sure that the system's capacity can handle that refrigerant. 448A, from all the reading and everything, and even the measurements that I've done myself, is it runs a higher discharge temperature so that the head of the compressor is going to be getting a lot hotter. So you have to make sure that the system is sized appropriately and that we have enough suction gas coming back to cool that compressor off. If you're running a low temp system, then you got to make sure that you have some kind of mechanical cooling like liquid injection or a DTC valve that's cooling the head of that compressor. So those are very important things. And we're definitely going to see some issues with these high glide refrigerants and these high discharge temp refrigerants that are coming out. But if you do the system correctly from the beginning, you're not going to run into issues. And so I haven't ran into any issues yet. I'm kind of curious, as the summertime comes along, what's going to happen. But all the systems that I've installed 448A on have been properly sized. So I don't anticipate any problems. If people aren't following manufacturers' installation instructions and different things, then, yeah, they may run into a problem. But, as far as people getting scared of it and whatever, I mean, you have no choice. I mean, for here in California, we basically had the rule come out this past January that, we can't use 404A on new installations anymore. So we've been working with it for 5 months now, if not longer. Well, I've been working with it for 5 months. I've probably got 10 to 12 systems with 448A in it right now. So far, I haven't had any problems. I mean, they run just fine. So, it's just one of those things. It's going to take time. I think our biggest hurdle with all these different refrigerants and all these people being afraid of change and all this different stuff is that a lot of us have gotten by, myself included, for a very long time with winging it, meaning that, you know, we can get it working. We may not understand completely how it works, but, you know, we got it working. Well, that's when some things start happening, especially when you start putting in change. We get so used to doing something a certain way and kind of half-ass understanding how it works. And then you throw in R448A, which has a super high temperature glide on it. And then we're like, what is that? How do I do that? You know, how do I check for that? And really the only time you're going to have a problem with 448A is if you're trying to, you know, well, I shouldn't say this, but if you're trying to calculate superheat, right? And you're, especially if you're using like a pressure chart that doesn't compensate properly for the midpoint of the glide, you know, those are some things that can get very confusing. So Brian Orr had written an article recently about glide, and you guys should go check it out. I believe it's on HVAC School. He wrote something about the high glide refrigerants and had some pretty interesting information in it. So I'm also, I don't know if he's in here yet, but I will also share Ralph. I have Ralph Vergara from Honeywell. He's always in here, and he's always willing to help people. He works for Honeywell Refrigerants, and he's always willing to help people with refrigerant retrofits. So I'm going to post his email in here because he always is at, you know, here usually. And if you guys have any questions about the high glide refrigerants, especially 448A, send an email to Ralph. I just posted his email right now, and I know he's super happy to answer these emails. So hit him up if you guys have questions. Kyle Carmen, he said, did I see that Testo is coming out with their new 350-foot range probes? Yeah, I did. I kind of learned about the same time that you guys all did. I think it's very funny because they look so similar to the field piece probes. But I'm also not going to knock them because the field piece probes look very similar to the Testo probes in a way too from the very beginning, right? So it's just one of those things how they all kind of copy each other and try to repair, you know, each other's mistakes and different things. But yeah, so I'd be interested to see if the range is true on the Testos. It basically, my understanding is they probably just went to Bluetooth 4.0, which is just the answer. That's what Fieldpiece did too. Hey, Dallas, thank you so very much. Or what is your real name? Because I know it's not Dallas, right? So what is your real name? I think you told me once before. Isn't it Mike or something like that? I think you told me that before. Really appreciate you, that super chat, dude. That's really awesome. So, all right, let's see what else I'm missing here. Can I explain the wiring and refrigeration piping of multiple coil walk-ins, i.e. slave coils? Yeah, I can. Okay, so first off, if we have multiple coils or a multiplex system, okay, you have to understand something. The refrigerant flow is usually shut off by a solenoid valve. Okay, the solenoid valve can be in multiple places. It can be up at the condensing unit. It could be in each individual evaporator coil. It just depends on what you're doing. In a multi-coil situation, it would be rather easy if the solenoid valve was in one single spot before all the evaporator coils. So then you could just run a common liquid line to the solenoid valve and then split off after that and go to all the other coils. But you know, different times that may be a problem depending on how many coils you have. Okay. Most of the time what I see is multiple evaporator coils and each one having its own solenoid valve with usually one temperature controller controlling all of them. Because in my opinion, it's easier to run electrical to all the coils rather than multiple liquid lines that are teeing off and going in multiple directions. Okay. So, and that means like putting a solenoid valve in one coil and then, you know, branching off of the outlet of that solenoid valve and go into other coils too. That can get a little complicated and kind of, you know, kind of hard to do in a confined space of an evaporator coil. So in essence, you just have to have a single source temperature controller, right? That is controlling all the different solenoid valves. So I find that to be the easiest method, in my opinion, is just to run a standard liquid line to each coil, have a solenoid, liquid line solenoid valve in every single coil. And then when the temp control turns on, it turns them all on at the same time. It turns them all off at the same time. Depending on the size of your boxes, you know, the boxes that I deal with are just like walk-ins in a restaurant, and the boxes usually are no longer than 30 feet long. So they might have 2 evaporators in them. Typically, we're not going to have multiple temperature controllers in that situation. So we're usually going to have a single source temperature controller. But if you get into like the big warehouse coolers and freezers, you're going to need multiple temperature controllers and different things. But especially when you get, well, even in the coolers too, but in coolers and freezers, when you have multiple evaporator coils, what you really need to be concerned about is your defrost strategy, right? because you typically, you know, you don't want the defrost to be fighting each other. So that can be a hard thing too. And that's a whole nother ball game, depending on how big the system is. If it's the small boxes like I work in, we defrost both of the coils at the same time, whether it be a freezer or a cooler. You know, and but in the big giant warehouse ones, you know, they may defrost them individually at different times. It just depends on the situation and how the system was sized and designed. So, let me see here. So yeah, to give some definition, a master coil is typically the coil that has the temperature controller and or solenoid valve in it. And then a slave coil is usually controlled by the master coil. So, you know, then you may have a, you know, the slave coil might not have a solenoid valve. So that's the situation that I actually usually don't use, where you have one single solenoid valve. I typically run, you know, a solenoid valve in every coil, and then, you know, one temperature controller. So there really is no true master or slave coil. That's usually my choice. Now, when you get into the more fancy digital controlled evaporators, like the Heatcraft QRC controllers and or the Beacon systems or the Key to Therm controlled systems, you know, they may still consider one to be a master coil because the temperature controller may be associated with one coil, and then the wiring, depending on their strategy, might come from that temperature controller. So, but the whole term master just means that that's the main coil and that controls the other ones. So hopefully that explains some of that a little bit. Let's see what else I'm missing in here. And go back up in here. Sorry, guys. Just sent it to me. Oh, so that's way back in the bottom. Just Russ, thank you so very much, man. I really appreciate it. Paul Lehman, thank you, sir. What are my thoughts on 427A refrigerant? Isaiah, I've used 427A refrigerant. I don't want to talk crap on it. I didn't have very good luck with it, but here's my take on all the different refrigerants, okay? Stop listening to the supply houses. Your supply houses are not necessarily always a source of proper educational materials, okay? Now, if you know what you're doing and you have a good supply house, then by all means, listen to what they have to say. But what I'm getting at is you can't always trust your supply house. For instance, one of my main supply houses that I use all the time, they have two really, really good guys there. They have the manager and then kind of the assistant manager, right? And then the other guys are just helpers, essentially, okay? Really nice guys. I'm not knocking any one of them, right? But the helpers typically repeat the things that they hear the assistant manager and the manager say. So what happens if one of those two main people at that supply houses gives false information? Then everybody else starts giving false information too. So where I'm going with this, when I first started using 427A, I was told it works great with mineral oil. You don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry about that. You can use it, you know, just basically remove the old R22, put 427A in it and call it a day. Well, 2 days later, I lost a 10-ton compressor, right? So then I changed that 10-ton compressor. A day later, I lost the new 10-ton compressor. What happened was the 427A refrigerant did not work well. And this is something that a lot of people have figured out, but it did not work well with a Train 3D scroll compressor. Because of the way that the bearings are lubricated in the Train 3D scroll compressor, there was some oil return problems and it needed that oil to come back, and the oil wasn't traveling as well as it was traveling before. Then what happened is we think what happened was there was a slug of oil coming back and it busted the valve on the top of the compressor and everything was bad. Okay. Now it was because I blindly trusted the supply house and they told me this would work. So I moved in there and just, essentially put 427A refrigerant in it and then didn't do my research. Now, after that happened, I really started to do my own research and I realized, oh my gosh, a lot of people have been having problems with this refrigerant and there was a lot of issues there. Okay. Now the main thing was that if you read the manufacturer's information, it says is compatible with mineral oil, but it's not necessarily the greatest way to use it. And for proper usage of that refrigerant, you wanted to have polyester oil. So the right way to do that would have been to change the oil in the compressor to polyester oil before I installed it. Then more than likely we never would have had a problem. But, you know, we tend to sometimes lean a little bit too much on the supply houses and trust them when they say, yeah, this works fine, because someone told them that it worked fine, but nobody did the research to find out for sure that it works fine. Okay. So to answer your question, Isaiah, I don't have a problem with 427A refrigerant. I just, I tend to use I still choose to use R22 just because I'd rather not have to deal with all the headaches of, you know, converting oils and different things. Okay. So, at this point in time, I've said it many times, I'm still using R22 refrigerant, and my customers know that. They're given the choice. I will fully, willingly use these alternative refrigerants, but they don't want to deal with the headaches and the problems that we might potentially run into. So at this time, they're either converting their systems, I mean, you know, reusing 22, or they're changing their systems out to 410, is, you know, putting in a new unit essentially. Okay. So, but I'm not talking crap on 427A. It just, you know, it works best with polyester oil. So the claims that it works amazing with mineral oil, you know, if you read the instructions, it says it will be compatible with mineral oil as long as you don't have high risers, big pressure drops, you know, all these stipulations, right? So that's where you got to be careful. So I'm going to go back up here and see what I'm missing here. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question for you, bud. Let me see here. My father and I are thinking about using it next year when R22 is gone. You just got to be careful, Isaiah. So, do I have any experience with the Ketotherm Plus Tech? Just did a class on the system this past week. Pretty cool technology. Kyle, yes, I've worked with Ketotherm stuff. I've worked with, I have a system out there running a walk-in freezer. I did not install it. It was pre-installed. I just took over the restaurant. It has a Ketotherm fully, electronic expansion valve system with the big giant evap efficiency controller. And then I have tons of the Ketotherm Temp Plus defrost controllers out there too. So the Temp Plus defrost is just kind of like a Ronco ETC 111000 replacement, but it has defrost built in. It's also similar to the A19 digital temperature controllers. Same thing. Okay. So it's basically an electronic temp control, but it has built-in defrost. Very, very good control. I like them a lot. Do I use them every time? No, I don't use one particular control on everything. In a certain situation, I will use a Ketotherm temperature controller, but in other situations, I might still use a Ronco temperature controller. So, but I have nothing, you know, I really do like the Ketotherm products. Their technology seems to be amazing. I have read and know that they're also integrating and building the digital circuit boards that come equipped in the Trenton ESP, I believe, ESP plus evaporator coils. And so you can get them fully communicating with digital controls. It's got a circuit board that Ketotherm makes for them. So you can essentially buy a whole evaporator coil that's already equipped with all the electronic stuff. And it's a lot cheaper than adding on all the Ketotherm electronic stuff. So look into that too if you guys are interested in the Ketotherm products. But yeah, they have great stuff. And I have no affiliation with them. Good guys. So all right, let me see what else I got going on here. Daniel, thank you very much, man. I really, really appreciate. Did I say polyester correct? All right, I may have said it wrong. Polyester? No, yeah, I said polyester. Yeah, right on. Okay. Yeah, Kyle. So yeah, you are able to monitor your system. So what you're going to find if you're working with restaurants is a lot of customers are concerned with privacy issues and different things. So I have a customer, but they do not want their system to go live on the internet. So I have a Ketotherm Temp Plus defrost controller out there with a Kita LDA controller on it. And basically that just makes it smartphone compatible or computer compatible, but it's not connected to a network. So whenever I get within, 50 feet of the restaurant, I can pull up that controller on my phone, but it's not connected to the internet. But I definitely could if I wanted to. Okay. But just, most of the customers that I deal with, they don't want to have like the whole Target fiasco where hackers came in and stole a bunch of data. They had like a data breach and they came in through the building automation system and everybody's afraid of that stuff. So most customers don't want to do that. All right. Okay. On R22 systems, will it be legal to repair if you changed R22 with a replacement refrigerant? Julio, there is a lot of confusion about the legality of fixing R22 systems, 410A systems, 404A systems. And I actually have some ideas to try to address those issues. If you guys notice, most of the videos that I do are pretty dumbed down versions and dumbed down explanations because that's how mine works. My mind works, I should say. I'm kind of a slow person. I appreciate hearing people being really smart and talking very smart, and I really do like to listen to it. But, I tend to understand information when it's slowed down for my brain. And so I plan on doing something like that. And what I mean is I am going to reach out to the powers that be. I do have some contacts within different sectors with the EPA and different things. And I do want to try to reach out and get some real simple explanations without a bunch of technical jargon that makes you confused and da 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 da. I just want a plain and simple yes or no answer. So I will be doing something like that in the future. Okay. And it will be, if I end up doing that video, it will be understandable, and you won't have to think, oh yeah, but after this date this happens, but then you ignore that rule because this administration came in, and after this, it's just too confusing. I just need a plain and simple answer. When can I use this? When can I not use it? What can I do? What can I not do? So I'm working on that, and I will do a full explanation video hopefully soon, okay, to make it completely understandable for everybody. All right. Largest motor I have ever replaced. Just Russ. I don't work on the very big stuff, so I'd say the largest motor is probably a 5 horsepower, maybe a 5 horsepower motor is probably the biggest one I've ever replaced. So yeah, I don't do any big giant stuff. So I did have to, I think I needed to use a crane or something for it. It was a big boy, but yeah, a small crane, I think. All right. Mr. Shipe Shafter. That's a very interesting name there. Do you know where I can find an image of a walk-in refrigerator, freezer, evaporator, fan diagram that points out and tells each name of individual parts? Interesting, bud. Hey, send me an email and maybe I have something for you. I don't know. hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Yeah, that can go to anybody that has questions for me. I'm going to type that in there. Send me an email and remind me about that, and I will try to answer that question for you and maybe get you a diagram if that helps. Joe65, do I still use R12? Yes, I still have a few systems out there, not a lot, but I still have a few systems that have R12, and I still have one drum of R12 with just a little bit of refrigerant left in it. So I really probably wouldn't sell that refrigerant, but I guess in a situation to get someone through the night, I might. But yeah, there's still a few systems out there. I still have a few systems. I can think of one walk-in freezer that still has 502 in it. I can think of, I actually just showed it in a video recently, a walk-in cooler that has R12 in it. So yeah, they're still out there. Still got them. Any learning experiences with electrical sparks and getting shocked? Ryan Drew. Yeah, Ryan. So I came up in a different time. And I probably don't follow all the safety practices that I should follow to this day, right? I've been shocked many times, probably more than I should be. Never by anything deadly, right? I mean, but I guess if you think about it, almost any electrical shock can be deadly, right? But I've never been shocked by anything more than 208 volts, okay? But so essentially, yeah, that would basically just be one leg, 115 volt leg essentially, because I haven't been shocked by both sides of a 208 volt circuit. So, but yeah, I've been shocked and I've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. Definitely. Okay. Working on energized circuits is definitely dangerous. I mean, there's an element to our industry that we have to do that, but we need to follow proper safety precautions. Okay. These days, some of the safety precautions are getting a little out of hand as far as what you have to do. I understand it's a safety thing. Okay. I get it, but it's just hard for an old school person to understand that they got to put a beekeeper suit on to open up a disconnect switch on a 480 volt circuit. I totally understand the safety. I've seen all the videos. I know what an arc flash is. I know how hot they can get. I'm just saying in general, it's hard to convince someone like me. I realize it now, but in the beginning when you told me I needed to put on a beekeeper suit, right, which is a big old protective suit and Kevlar gloves and all this different stuff to be able to open up a disconnect, it seemed kind of silly because I've done it so many times without doing it. But the thing we have to remember, especially the older guys that are working in the industry, is that it only takes one time to ruin your life. So is it really that much of an inconvenience for us to have to put on proper safety precautions to open up a disconnect? Because that one time might happen to you. So it's very important that we follow those safety practices. I definitely need to follow more safety practices, more than I do. Okay. You guys got to remember, you want to go home when you go, I mean, you want to go home at night. You know, you don't want your wife or your spouse or whoever to get a phone call that you're not coming home. And it's true that it can happen. So we need to be more cautious and we need to follow more proper safety precautions. Do I have an exact situation to reference? No, not really. Maybe I can think about that for a while and think of one situation where I got shocked and it scared the you-know-what out of me or something like that. I'm trying to think. I can't think of one that pops off the top of my head, but I'll think about it some more. All right. Okay, Joseph Camo, you said, why don't they add dye to Freon from the factory to help find leaks? Okay, number one, dye is not necessarily safe for the system, okay? Dye can have contaminants, and it's not necessarily approved, okay? One thing you got to be cautious about is also trusting what you read on a package, all right? So we've got a package of refrigerant dye, and I'm going to explain this a little more context, so don't tune me out yet, but we have a package of refrigeration dye. We go to the local supply house, and on the package it says OEM safe, and you think, okay, cool, it's safe. What OEM manufacturer approved that dye? First off, okay? OEM safe can mean a lot of things, because an OEM is not just Copeland compressors or Tecumseh compressors or Bristol compressors or Aspera or Embraco or any one of those, right? An OEM can also be, anybody that's an original equipment manufacturer. Okay, so the OEM can also be the manufacturer of, the air conditioner, not just necessarily the compressor. Okay, so OEM approved is a very vague term. So just because you read it on a package doesn't mean that it's approved by all equipment manufacturers. So you need to be cautious. Do your research. Have I used dye? Yes, I have. So I'm not going to sound like a hypocrite that's never used it. I've used it. I don't like it. It was a last resort. It worked in one instance, but I also have a very recent video or it might have just been a Facebook post where I went to go do a second opinion on a walk-in cooler that had refrigerant leaks. And the original contractor had put a sticker on the unit that they put dye in it. So I have a dye flashlight in my van, and I got my dye kit out, and I opened the flashlight up, and I'm looking around for the leak. And I can see fluorescent dye in certain places, but then I also got my leak detector out too. And my leak detector pinpointed a leak, and then I used soap bubbles or Big Blue leak detector, liquid leak detector, sprayed it on there, and the dye wasn't even coming out of the leak, but the Big Blue soap bubbles was showing the micro leaks all over it. Okay, so dye isn't always the one-stop shop. Okay, dye will only work if the oil is traveling to that point in the system where the refrigerant's leaking out. If there's no oil in that refrigerant, so you'll tend to see problems at the tops of the evaporator coils and different things where the oil might hang out at the bottom more. So dye isn't always the answer, but dye can also be a bad chemical. Depending on which manufacturer of the dye it is, they might add some weird additives to the system, and you just don't know how well it is. So why don't manufacturers add dye? Because they don't want to warranty that stuff. If you think about it, a manufacturer doesn't want to warranty anything they don't have to. And for a manufacturer, let's just say Carrier, Trane, Lennox, whoever, to go put dye in their systems, they're basically guaranteeing that compressor too. But then when that compressor fails, if it fails, they're going to want to go back to the manufacturer. Let's just say it's Copeland or LG or whoever. And they're going to say, hey, this compressor failed. And the manufacturer is going to say, we don't approve that dye in that system. But the manufacturer, so it just creates a problem. So, they don't want the liability. So that's why they don't put that stuff in there. All right. If I'm missing stuff, guys, let's throw it in the bottom of the chat so that way I can get to your guys' questions. Okay. All right. So I can run my line. So he cut the entire power to the whole plaza. Yeah, that's dangerous. Prime time, cutting power to a whole place, man. That's some scary stuff, man. I've had an arc explosion or arc. One of my techs one time, he asked me if the system was de-energized, and I said, yeah, I de-energized it. Well, the drain line heater was energized via a separate circuit, so he went to go cut it, and it blew a hole in his lineman pliers. And that at that moment right there, everybody realized that when we were working together, because we all kind of came up together, was we don't trust anybody anymore. We verify voltage yourself, and that's something you guys should follow by too. You need to verify that something is de-energized before you start playing with it. Don't assume or don't trust that someone else says it's de-energized. You always need to verify for yourself because it's your life, not theirs. All right. what replacement refrigerant would I use to replace R22? If I had to use a replacement refrigerant at this point in time, I would change the oil to polyester oil and I would use R407C. Okay. But I don't like to use replacement refrigerants. I've never used R407C. So if I had to choose one, I would choose 407C, but I would definitely change all the oil to polyester, not just add a little bit of polyester to a mineral or something like that. I'm a by the book kind of a person as much as possible. So, but yeah, it's still to this day, I still use R22 and that's what I'm selling. So, all right. Always check twice. That's definitely true. Okay. Let's see if I'm missing anything else in here. Okay. I'm going to hit some more questions that I have on my thing. You guys definitely, throw some more questions in the chat if you guys have them. Let's see. Okay, so I had a question that actually came in the very beginning of this chat, and I'm assuming that you were a new tech because your question was, should I focus more on ice machines and or the refrigeration side? He was trying to choose between which one, okay? And I would strongly suggest that you focus on all of them. First off, if you learn the refrigeration system, it's the very important thing you need to learn first. Before you do air conditioning, ice machines, or anything, you need to learn basic refrigeration, okay? A compressor pumps, compression, heat of compression, you know, the change of state of the refrigerant and all those different things, because every one of our systems out there uses the basic refrigeration concepts. So you need to make sure that you understand the refrigeration concepts. So don't limit yourself just to ice machines or just to refrigerators or just to air conditioners. If you can, learn as much as you can because you become a much more valuable resource. You can work for a company forever just doing air conditioning work, but then what happens if we have like a crazy winter like we're having right now? Here in Southern California, it's raining today. In the month of May, I don't think we've had one day over 80 degrees. It's been cold. It's been crazy. And, we're a little bit slower. We're not getting the air conditioning calls, but I'm still getting refrigeration calls. So the more knowledge that you have, the more valuable you're going to be, and you're going to be able to stay busier potentially. Okay. So expand your knowledge. People that ask me all the time, what's the best thing to learn? What's going to give me an edge over the next guy and all these different things? Learn the basics, learn how refrigeration, learn your electrical. And definitely, if you want to know new emerging technologies, make sure you're computer savvy and also learn about VRF systems. Okay. Variable refrigerant flow, variable refrigerant volume. I know nothing about them. I would love to learn more about them, but it's just not something I have time to go to school for. But VRV systems, VRF systems, those are definitely becoming more and more popular. So definitely learn up on the VRF and VRV systems. All right. Okay. Let me see what else. What I am missing here. Yeah, it has been cold everywhere. So, solenoid was energizing and de-energizing like crazy. That's interesting, bud. Okay. Let's see what else. Yeah, so I did. Okay, I'm going to address it again. In the very beginning of this stream, I brought up something. So I'm working on a new project. It will be a video series that I'm releasing on this channel. I already mentioned it in the beginning. I'm going to mention it again for the people that are coming in. It'll be coming out maybe this evening, maybe this week. It's going to be a video series, like maybe 4 or 5 part video series where myself and my wife are going to be talking. And I'm going to basically explain how our life works and how we have dealt with the stresses, the problems, the headaches, what it's like for her to have to deal with me. I have mild mental disorder, all kinds of different stuff. Okay. So this is not going to be in lieu of my normal videos. Okay. I'm still going to release my normal videos on Mondays and Fridays. This is just going to be like a little bonus episode, basically talking about how we do it, what kind of problems we go through. Basically, my whole goal in this is that I want to answer some of the questions that maybe your spouse may have about how other spouses deal with this kind of stuff. Okay. We definitely have a very interesting dynamic, my wife and I, because I am a business owner and a service tech. I obsess about things. I've got mild OCD, undiagnosed, but you guys have seen it, the way that I work. So I'm definitely kind of a very unique person. And so we're going to kind of dive into things. So we start with like a general episode where I introduce her. We just kind of talk a little bit, and then we're going to branch off and go, you know, into other videos. And these videos aren't typically, my plan is that they're going to be 15, 20 minutes long each. So it's not like they're going to be 2-hour long videos or anything. Okay. And we're going to release a series of them, but they're just going to be bonus videos. Again, they're not going to replace my normal technical videos. Okay. So that will be coming out soon. I know I keep saying this. I reordered some samples of merch. That's coming out soon too. Let's see if they turn out good this time, then I'll release them to the public and go from there. Okay. Yes. AirPro 986. Yes. We have a C20 and a C38 license. So refrigeration and air conditioning license here in Southern California. Okay. Let's see if I'm missing anything. You have 4 no AC calls. You're excited. Good for you, Isaiah. Very, very cool. All right, guys, let's throw some more questions in here. I would definitely want to try to get to them. Again, guys, this video is in lieu, this live stream is in lieu of my normal live stream on Monday night. I will not be doing a live stream tomorrow because my kids are off. My wife, you know, we're all going to go ride bikes. And just have a nice family day. So I didn't want to have to worry about being home at a certain time or anything. So I'm not going to be doing a live stream tomorrow night. That's why I'm doing this one on Sunday. So, yeah, if you guys, have any more questions or anything else you want me to talk about, let's throw it in the chat real quick and we'll definitely try to get to that. So, when have you bypassed boards or safeties? Slow Mosaic. I'm not going to lie and say I've never bypassed a board before. I have. I've done certain things to get customers by, but I've never left them in a dangerous situation. And I've never left a situation where, like, I don't bypass components on a heating system. Heck no. There's too much liability involved in that. So when have I done it? It's hard to say. I might have bypassed a safety switch on a air conditioner. Like, I'm sure I've bypassed a low pressure switch because it failed or something and I needed to get someone going. I'm sure I've done it for a day or so, but you want to be cautious because when you start bypassing things, when you take, you know, essentially you're re-engineering that system. If something happens bad because of something that you did, you're liable. So you need to be cautious about bypassing things. You need to make sure that you understand how they work and make sure that you're not putting anyone at risk or any danger. Be very, very cautious. Okay. Let's see what else I got in here. Okay. What do I think about lock ring kit? Julio Mendez. I have not used the Vulcan lock ring yet. It's something that's very intriguing to me when you're working with like R290 or flammable refrigerants like R32, isobutane. What is that? R600 or something. It's very interesting. So if you guys don't know, it's a mechanical fitting, not like the Zoom lock, but similar concept. Okay. And essentially it presses onto the copper. The thing that concerns me about the Vulcan lock ring is the lubricant that you have. They have like this blue or red lubricant that you put on the fitting and then you shove the coupler on it. And I just see that lubricant going into the system. So that's something that very much concerns me. And all the training videos I've seen on the lock ring tools, people put that lubricant in there and it seems like it's going to get in the fitting and contaminate things. So that definitely scares me when you see that lubricant. But I've never used it. I'm intrigued, but also the price point, it's a bit out of my reach. So I'm not going to buy one, but definitely interesting. Let's see what else I got in here. Have I worked on pneumatics? Paul Dieter. No, I when I first came up in trade school, I definitely took a pneumatics class. That was before they stopped offering that a long time ago. Now it's BIS or building automation systems. But yeah, I've taken pneumatics classes, but I've never worked on a pneumatic system. I've only done it in school. So nope, not my cup of tea. Just don't know what I'm doing there. I understand the concept of pneumatics definitely, but just never taken it. I probably got a book on pneumatics back here. I don't know. No, I got some DDC books and different things. I've taken some other classes, but I don't work on any DDC systems or anything like that. I've just read books and different things on them. I've got a pneumatics book somewhere around here. It's an old Carrier pneumatics book. I'll have to look in my books and different things. All right. Let's see what else. All right. Yes, it did. Oh, so ambient temperature. Okay, guys. I think that we are going to wrap this up, because I'm kind of out of topics to cover. Unless you guys have some more stuff to throw in here, questions, I'm probably going to start wrapping this up. I really, really appreciate you guys coming in here. You guys definitely send me some emails if you have questions, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. And I will try to get back with you guys on those. Okay. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. So pay attention. And that new video series is going to be, one part of it will be coming out. Maybe I'm going to edit down the video today. There's not a whole lot of editing I'm doing. You know, I typically don't go the big editing stuff. Okay. So I kind of do my stuff pretty raw, and the conversation I have with my wife is going to be pretty raw. You know, not really cutting things up. You're just going to get what we're really talking about. So, let me see these last couple questions that just came in. Will I do some videos on some of the different temperature controllers? Yeah. I definitely have a video out there, but I can redo another video too, where I explain the different temperature controllers for reach-in coolers. I also wrote an article for HVAC School a while back, explaining temperature controllers and constant cut-in temperature controllers and the different types. So if you go to HVAC School or hvacrschool.com, that's Brian Orr's website. And if you on his, when you pull up there, you can see his tech tips, and you can Google search my name, Chris Stevens, and you'll see the different articles that I've written for him. I think I've done like 2 or 3 articles for him. And one of them was on temperature controllers, and it talks about mechanical, digital, constant cut in, and different things. So, and then I did like an addendum video that like showed the temperature controllers also. So you can kind of go through my channel and look that up, but I'll definitely see if I can't maybe kind of do a new updated version for you guys and cover that. Let's see. What's my prescription for a 143 system? I'm assuming a 134A system. Building 7 refrigeration. So on a 134A system, where they're plagued with plugged up capillary tubes. And typically what happens is because they use polyester oil, and it typically happens on systems that aren't maintained very well. And what starts to happen is the oil gets overheated, and it starts to get thick and wax and coagulate, whatever happens inside the system, and it plugs up capillary tubes. Okay. So if you just have a mild restriction, it's not a big deal. What you can typically do is put in a good liquid line filter dryer. Sporlan makes their 032 cap T dryer, and it's a really good dryer. You can throw that on there, and sometimes you can get away with just changing the capillary tube. You got to change the whole thing. Don't try to clean it out, because that's not going to work. But if it's a really, really bad system where the oil is really contaminated, you're going to need to change the oil, which isn't very practical on a cap tube system. You typically want to just go ahead and change the compressor. That's the only way to solve it completely, because I've had systems that just, you'll change a cap tube and 2 weeks later the cap tube will plug up again, and it just keeps happening because the oil's so contaminated in there. A lot, like I said, it's a lot of times it's systems that aren't maintained properly. So try the 032 cap T dryer from Sporlan. If that doesn't work, then you're going to need to probably go ahead and change the compressor and then change the cap tubes again. That's kind of be the only way, and they got to maintain it properly. Okay. All right. Really, really appreciate you guys coming in here. Let's see what else I got. What program do I use for invoices and estimates? Bruh. I use Intuit Field Service Management. It's powered by Corrigo. So it's the same thing as Corrigo's, whatever they call it. That's what we've used for 5-6 years now. And that handles dispatching, invoicing. It does it all for us. So do I have any books that I recommend? In the show notes of this video is a couple Amazon links, and one of them is to Commercial Refrigeration for Air Conditioning Technicians. Every single time I recommend this. Commercial Refrigeration for Air Conditioning Technicians by Dick Wurz. There's a link to this in the video notes. That is the refrigeration technician's Bible as far as learning refrigeration. It's a great book. It's meant for technicians that are already air conditioning technicians that want to learn refrigeration. But if you're a smart guy, you can pick up that book and kind of learn how to do both. Okay. Great book. I highly recommend that. Let's see what else. And what would I recommend for an overweight guy trying to become an HVAC tech? That's a really good question, bud. So I'm slightly overweight, but not very bad. Okay. I weigh about 200 pounds and I'm about 5'10". So I'm just chubby essentially. But it's even getting harder and harder for me to climb into some of these tiny little spaces. I for the first time in a very long time, I couldn't get into an attic, and I had to have another technician go up into there, because once we got on top of the walk-in, we had to shimmy under a gas line, a giant main that wasn't movable, and I just couldn't fit underneath it. There's really no solution for that. It's going to be hard for a big guy to get into HVAC, especially if you get into the restaurants. It's going to be damn near impossible. You might do okay up on rooftop systems. Definitely. But remember, you're climbing ladders, so you're lifting equipment. So you got to be able to be physically fit to get up there. Okay. You got to be able to handle the heat. So I'm not trying to say don't do it. I'm just saying you're going to have some challenges. You gotta kind of pick and choose what you're going to work on. You're probably not going to make it in the restaurant refrigeration side because we have to work in tiny little boxes and it's hard to get in there. So it's just one of those things. I think you're going to be better suited working on the HVAC package units, big stuff on the roof. You might do better up there because then you're not necessarily climbing in. You definitely aren't going to make it as an install guy if you're really, really big, because it's going to be hard to climb into an attic to run, you know, a 50-foot piece of 10-inch flex or whatever you're doing. It's going to be hard. So I wish you the best. I'm running into the challenges myself. So let's see if I'm missing anything else. How's the redfish meter? I've used it 2 times. It's all right. Really discouraging that it doesn't have a magnet. I know they're going to release a magnet, all that fancy stuff. I'm going to be honest with you guys. The first time that I used it, I made a video, but I haven't released it yet. But the first time that I used it, it was very confusing because I don't like to read instructions. So I just kind of like to figure things out. And I tried to figure out the capacitance under a load test or whatever, you know, while it was energized, and I couldn't figure it out. I finally had to watch Jim Bergman's video, and once he did that, then I figured it out. But as far as like how user friendly it is, like you definitely need to read the manual or watch some videos on how to use it. So all right, gents, we are going to wrap this up. Really appreciate it. Go ahead and send me some emails, and we will definitely catch you guys on the next one. And I'm going to go ahead and cue the outro music, and we will see you guys.